Yes, yes, excellent, excellent.
Oh, yes.
Roll the intro.
Oh, yes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Residents of Horror Save Room Podcasts. I am your host, Kevin, and this is my co-host.
I am Jacob Christensen.
Yes, and I'm pointing at him, as usual.
Yes.
In his exact direction. Can't miss it. All the way in the great state of greatness.
Great state of greatness. That's what they call it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm living in the state of, I wish I was not here.
Oh no, that's horrible.
Well, I mean,
you want to tell me about that, or?
No, I'm just talking about California, just in general.
Oh, it's like, well, it's California's not special.
No.
Ooh, I'm going to turn that mic down just a bit. I think I did that instead of the volume. I'm an idiot.
It happens.
Mic goes there, volume goes there.
It happens. It happens.
There we go. Now I'm not picking up my fan either. Yeah, see, genius.
Alrighty, so this
What's on the docket tonight?
This last weekend was a big weekend for everybody who's a fan of Resident Evil.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Separate ways. Overall thoughts? Before we break it down.
Well, it might have just gotten Resident Evil 4 Remake back into my, it might be my favorite game in the franchise bowl. And you want to know what's funny about it?
What's funny? Make me laugh.
Okay, I think it has a lot more to do with the free update than it does the actual DLC.
Oh, yes, very addicting, isn't it?
Yes. So this is how I'd like to conquer it. Let's actually talk about Separate Ways, the DLC, and then we'll go into the extra stuff like Mercenaries and everything else that comes along with that.
That is what I would prefer, honestly. So, cool. We're both on the same page.
So, Separate Ways, you know, it's like, if you don't know what that is, it's DLC for Resident Evil 4 Remake, where you get to play as Ada Wong. It's actually one of the things that the original Resident Evil 4 had that this remake didn't have, and it does a lot more to put things back in than it's just ridiculous. My 3 predictions for that DLC was that you got to play as Lucas in one level. You had to fight it, and then also the lasers would come back. And I gotta say, like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, you know what? Oh, okay, so one of the things I was kind of surprised about where the giant fight in the village was, it was not where I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be in that quarry. Nothing happened. I was like, oh.
No, yeah.
I was so misled. I'm like, dang, because that's such a... I mean, when I was rolling through there with Leon, I was like, okay, definitely a boss arena if I fall down there or something. I was waiting for something to happen, and I'm like, surely that must be for Ada. It's just, nope. I was like, well, okay.
Actually, that's like one of my favorite set pieces.
Yeah, I was like, dang, it's so
like
big.
The fact they took that windmill area, you know, you go through it like 2 or 3 times, and they recontextualize it as this boss arena where you're going on the roofs and everything. It's very, very good. I enjoy it.
I like that a lot. I beat him first time around.
As far as like me having problems, I didn't die until the final special boss. Yeah. That's the only time I died. I was playing on just like regular normal, whatever normal's equivalent is, though.
I was playing it on standard. I died a couple of times, but I haven't played the game in a little while, so I'm like, oh, I got to get used to how this thing works again. Way better on PC than I am with a controller.
Yeah.
Just reconfirmed that this week, and I was like, oh yeah, this is where I'm at home with.
So, as far as like my experiences go, it's just like, it's just Separate Ways again. I think the thing it redeemed me on, comparing it to the trailer, was where I was very much on the fence about Wesker. I am now into Wesker camp because comparing his character to the original four is that in the original four he wasn't. The only real head scratcher about the entire situation is when he actually shows up on site.
I thought that was awesome. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't know how soon it was going to happen. And it happened pretty early on, which kind of made me wonder. I was just like, well, if he's there, then why would he even have Ada do what she's doing in the first place if he could just do it himself, but better?
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't played Mercenaries and know how cool Wesker can be, I mean, I'm just saying. But
yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
The thing is, like, he showed up, and I'm like, well, hold on. He is like a superhuman. Why is he even hanging out with Ada? My impression was he was busy doing something else, which makes me think, like, are we going to get a Wesker separate ways and a Krauser separate ways? It's one of those things where it's just like, it sounds like they're alluding to him being busy doing something.
Yeah. I also like the little nod of complete global. No, not global. He says local saturation. Complete local saturation.
Yeah.
I was like, he said almost the thing. Pretty much almost said
the thing. Well, that's the thing. Like, this Albert Wesker, he is the Albert Wesker from 5 and not the Albert Wesker from Resident Evil 1.
So, I would say as far as his writing and his mannerisms, I was slightly let down because I appreciated the calm, cool, collective, and calculating Wesker from the original.
This Wesker is very pissed off.
Yeah, he wants things done now. Like, okay, if you're setting him up to be the madman in 5, I'm like, okay, it's starting here. But I'd like a little bit more context. Like, I would like, if they, and people have talked about, if they do a remake of 1, I would like that calm, cool, collective Wesker. That doesn't get too pissed too often. I did like, however, at the end of the DLC where, that he gets the comm from one of his guys and he's like, hey, Wong took the helicopter and is diverting from where she's supposed to be. He's like, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, but anywho, I'm sorry. We should stick in order, actually. So, Luis. We got more Luis.
Yeah.
That was one heck of an intro, I would say.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Okay, they hammed it up for him, for sure. I'm just like, I was fine with it because I wanted a little bit more hammy with him, just because I wanted to see him in his natural habitat.
He is a hammy character by default, so it was right in character for him to be doing that whole thing he was doing at the beginning with the dance and all that.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, it didn't bug me. I saw a stream where it bugged a lot of people in the chat. I'm like, okay. Our favorite thing to do as fans is hate on the games.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I going back to, like, Wesker's character, I find it interesting how, like, they picked which Wesker they wanted to go. Because the thing is, it's like, I was expecting more of, like, RE1 style, because RE1 is, like, in that, like, remake canonicity where 5 and is much more into the, like, does this count or not? And it's that weird thing where it's just like Resident Evil 7 and 8 follow the canonicity of the original games and not necessarily the remakes.
Yeah.
And it's weird for them to be remaking that, but not trying to make it all into one, like, the new canon. There's, like, the old canon that's still continuing, and this new canon that's its own thing. Where it's just like, no, this is kind of like alternate reality almost, where it's like Leon is not the Leon from 4, original 4, or, and it's that thing of just like, as weird as it is, like, the remake just in general, just how it's just like, it's tweaked on degrees, where it's just like, it is just an update. It's not really a overhaul in a weird way.
I see it as more of an attempt at, like, a Christopher Nolan grounded Batman, where it's more of like, okay, let's do a little bit more of a grounded Resident Evil.
Yeah.
As far as the characters go and how they respond to things,
Well,
I
that's the
believe that's
thing.
what I'm getting from it, anyways.
Like across the board, and I would argue 2 onward, because that's really where this new new canonicity initiative comes from.
Yes.
Because the original, like, Resident Evil 1 remake, it is just straight up a perfect version of the original one.
Yes.
Right? When you look at the two, and it's just like, well, this remake is just the same game. It's just superior in every way. Unlike 2's remake, which is like a completely different game, and 3's remake is a really different game.
Yes. And I was going to get into this later, but yeah, you know what? This is a great segue. I finally started playing your PS1 Resident Evil 2 that you gifted me like 3 years ago.
Oh, yay!
So I have to say, I haven't gotten too far, but I actually like it a little bit more than the remake. Just because of how simple it is and the things it asks of you and how it contextualizes its story versus the new one, where it's like the new one's trying to make up for stuff and set the tone. And that old one just it already kind of knows what it is.
Yeah.
And it hops right in. I mean, it's literally like 3 buttons. And I'm not dissing on 2 as far as like as a game. I think it's great at what it does. I have little issues here and there with character, like portrayals of Leon, Claire, and Ada, but they're more little things. Gameplay wise, I think it's great. It works. It has that slow build to it.
Yeah.
I really like how more than half the puzzles work, and the fact that I'm able to go back and remember them all is amazing to me. Now I'm just trying to challenge myself with the OG one, and I'm having a blast with it. Like, honestly, there's a place not too far from me that has the OG Resident Evil 1, and I am so tempted to pick it up, but it's like, it's expensive, and I gotta wait till I'm in a better spot. But I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But just playing that got me excited for that, and eventually Dino Crisis. But that's my
I can vouch for
first
Dino
impression.
Crisis as well. Dino Crisis 2 is fun as well. It's a
Yeah.
little different. It's a little more actiony, where it's just like, oh,
It's not so much survival horror. It's more
yeah,
action.
it's more like Resident Evil 4 in a weird way. It's like you're playing Mercenaries in a classic Resident Evil engine.
So, excuse me. That's what I've heard it compared to, actually, is you could see the bone structure. Excuse me. My goodness. You can see the bone structure of what they've done with 4, or OG 4, in Dino Crisis 2, is what I keep hearing about it every time I watch a video about it. So it's like, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to look back at some of these other games, like even Hunting Ground has a lot of, like, graphically and, like, originally where some of the story was going to go. That made it in there, and you can even just checking out that game, you're like, oh yeah, this has some strong 4 vibes as well with it.
Yeah. The thing about Hunting Ground is I decided it's a game I really like. I just don't like playing it.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Cuphead, just because I'm not good at side-scrollers and how demanding the game wants you to go, which I went as far as I could, and I have to say, man, I really, really liked it. I just wish I was better at it. That's my only problem with it. I just wish I was better at it. But overall, I really like it.
Yeah, but the thing is like Haunting Ground, like, it wastes a lot of time on you hiding. Like, you're not really playing the game a lot of the time. Like, if you know, and that's just the way that it is. So it's like Resident Evil without the combat, and the hiding mechanic is not good. And in the case of just like, oh, go and hide in a closet for 3 minutes.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's a game you play at the end of your day when you don't feel like doing much.
Yeah,
it requires a little bit of patience.
A game that does waiting way better, in my opinion, is Shenmue, which runs on like a clock over the day, right? And everybody's got their own schedule and stuff, but it's like you gotta be in certain places at certain times, and if you don't get there by then, it's just like, oh well, you gotta wait until the next day before you can you missed your appointment, right? So you got to wait until next day to try and get that appointment.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's like thing where it's just like there's not like a skip to next day button. So it's just like, well, shoot, what do I do now? I guess I'll go play in the arcade or go and see what the other characters in the village are up to and things like that. It's one of that's kind of thing where it's like the structure for it just it's like it wants you to waste time like that. I've never seen a game want you to just sit back, relax, and waste time more than Shenmue 1.
Which I haven't played that game, but now you've piqued my curiosity. My curiosity has been piqued a lot lately about different games I wouldn't normally play. So it's like, oh, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
I can go for something that's just to set a mood or just wants you to enjoy something for the sake of enjoying it over the overall point of the game.
Right, and going but about Shenmue, another interesting aspect about it is like you play as a martial artist in that, and so it's got like a Tekken or a Street Fighter style fighting game in the game for combat, but you only have to do about 5 fights.
Oh wow! Huh.
Throughout the entire game, so it's one of those things where it's just like it's kind of interesting. Now you could have more than those 5 fights if you actually struggle around and look for trouble, but I think the ultimate evolution of like a game where the combat is all that it's about is the Yakuza games.
Yeah.
Where it's just like
the series I've been tapping into is Judgment.
Right.
So, and I actually really like that. Especially, I didn't realize I would enjoy it as much, but I enjoyed the courtroom stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, this is I kind of like where it's just a culmination of all your work just summed up, and it's just like, okay, you might have to go and finagle a couple things here and there, and of course you have your struggle of like, oh man, we only have this much recess time. You got to go do this fast to make sure these witnesses show up in time, or the Yakuza are trying to beat them up or something like that. So it's like, oh, I kind of like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
So
anywho, I'm going to circle this really quick right back into separate ways because we took a left turn there.
Well, you kind of beat me to it. I was planning on segueing back.
Okay,
but,
cool.
Talking about like the specifics of separate ways and the differences of it, it's like you got a grappling hook.
Yes, I love the way that they utilized it, and they utilized it the way I was hoping they would.
Yeah. Did you get the charm that allows you to grapple shields off of enemies?
Absolutely.
It's one of those things where it's just like, oh, you're dedicated, it's just like, oh, okay, there's no reason why I wouldn't get that. But then after like looking and actually seeing what the other charms did, I could see where you might struggle to be like, oh, I need 3 things and I need to pick which 3 things I'm going to do.
It kind of depends on your build and how you're going to roll, like with what type of weapons. Honestly, it wasn't too hard for me because obviously pistol I was using the most, so I could use the most craft items for that. And then definitely the charm for Ada used the grappling hook on shields. I mean, that's kind of a must. And then I used mostly the TMP because I was trying to save up on my shotgun for like harder like clusters or boss battles or something like that. So that it wasn't too hard for me, but I mean, I plan on replaying it multiple times because you can't 100% all your weapons the first time around.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well that's fine. I was planning on doing that anyways. So,
and comparing this to the original Separate Ways, like they did all the things I was asking Capcom to do in a remake, where I was just like, the way that Separate Ways originally fell down for me is like, all the really cool engaging things you have in the main campaign, like the merchant and upgrading your weapons and all that stuff. It's just wasn't there in Separate Ways. It's just like, here it is. It's like, oh, it's a really, really long or it's a set of levels where you have to use Ada's things.
It's a checklist.
Yeah, and it's just like, but the fact that they added the merchant, the fact that they added like, you can upgrade things, it fixes a lot of like the reasons why I had a tough time finishing Ada's like separate ways in the original game, because it was just like, oh, it's not really fun. This is more like a test. This is like final exam, hard mode stuff.
Yeah, and I would need to confirm this, but I don't even think there is a difficulty selection.
There is not.
So yeah,
in
for the original one. So and the standard mode felt just a little not harder, but I felt like the Ganados were a little bit more aggressive. Which, you know what, I'm just like, you know what, it's standard mode, it's fine, because original Ada run through was a little bit more like, okay, you know, get ready, because this is the test. I mean, they even cap off certain things that you can do and not do with the merchant in the original one. And this one just doesn't have any caps on it, which I'm yeah, sure, thank you.
Yeah, the fact that you can purchase all of the treasure maps with just one purchase, I thought was nice.
Which I'm not going to do because I like discovering things. So this just gave me more things to go around and try and discover.
As a person who did get the treasure maps and went through it, the biggest payout ones are ones that you're just going to run across shooting people. Like there are glasses on a villager, there's a beret on a soldier.
Oh,
there's
yeah, I did that.
The jacket comes back.
Oh yeah, well that's like one of the first objectives.
Leon's jacket.
I think it's kind of hilarious because the merchant is very aware. Like it's not like a figment of Leon's imagination or anything like that. It's just a very confirmed character, and he just like, okay, Leon goes off and does his other stuff, and he's like, yeah, I have your jacket, Leon. I'm just not gonna say anything.
Well, it's like
he's just like, yeah, I bought it. It was sold back to me. Which is kind of funny because he doesn't really make a profit off of that, but still, the whole fact that it's like, okay, his jacket's confirmed very safe at this point.
Yeah. But, the grappling hook was a good implementation. The other thing about the grappling hook I like in combat is the fact that you can, like, headshot or leg shot somebody, and from across the room you can just be like melee them, because you can just grapple to them and then melee them, and then everybody between you and the target. Like, I was always head shooting the person on the back of the line, so I could just go through everybody and hurt everybody on the way there.
Oh yeah, I did the same thing, a full advantage of it. I was like, yeah, let me do this. Oh, thank you. Yes. I also liked how it would cancel out other enemies' attacks if they were mid-attack. So it's just like, no, I am the boulder in this situation.
You're invincible while you're doing it, so it's not like somebody's attacking, they're gonna knock you out of it or anything like that.
So yeah, definitely. So okay, moving on to U3 or It.
Wait, what?
The U3 boss or It, is it's also referred to.
Well, that's the black robe guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Them, because that was the first,
I liked it.
That was actually I messaged you, I think it was early Saturday morning, asking you like how far you got, and then I was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna be busy for the next day, and this is our first time actually talking about it. Mm-hmm. That was actually the reason I wanted to talk to you, because I was like, I was really excited of how well they implemented that. I can't say I didn't see it coming till I saw the pit area and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I recognized that little like side area and I was like, hey, this looks just like the place. Like, of course they cut out the entire starting portion of that fight, but they give you a second part of the fight instead, where you fight a centipede tail in the pit. And it's just like, okay, so this is a brand new boss. And oddly enough, like, it's not too dissimilar from a boss from Resident Evil 3, the original Resident Evil 3.
Where they throw out the little mine things. Yeah, no, I kind of recognize that a little bit. Is that a Nemesis thing? I can't remember.
No, it's literally a worm. It's just a worm that got mutated.
Oh, that boss. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I liked the fight. I liked how it's weird how they keep on doing this, merged two characters together to get that result. It's just like, oh, it's the thing. And then also, it is also that mysterious black-robed guy, because you have the left and right hands of
Right.
what's his name?
Ramon Salazar.
Ramon. Yeah, Ramon. And it's just like, hey, you get the Leon has his own antagonist boss fight with the red-robed one, but the black one just disappeared.
Yeah, and everybody was like, "Oh, hey, what happened?" And I kind of figured it was a setup for separate ways, where she'd fight the other one. Which, yeah, I did like that they brought in the pursuer factor for that, because that's a Resident Evil staple.
Unfortunately, because of the way it was balanced, though, I always knew whenever he was going to pop up, because they'd give me there'd be just arbitrary. I don't know how the
blue and red mist.
Well, it's not even that. They would give me a whole bunch of healing items and stuff before the fight consistently.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has to do more with how I was playing and my difficulty and the auto difficulty stuff going into that was doing that, or if that's hard state, because there's a lot of items in the game, despite it does have those difficulty chicanery where you look away at an empty shelf, and then when you look back, all of a sudden there's a green herb there.
Yeah, where you circle back, and it's like, oh, hey, that's the thing I really needed, actually. Thank you.
It literally, though, it's just it's so fast. There was a green herb where on somewhere where the difference is a matter of seconds. It was off screen, and it took the opportunity to spawn it there, which I didn't think that's how it worked. I thought it was a little more distanted than that, but I don't know. Maybe, and it's only happened in separate ways once. So
I haven't seen that, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I just thought it was weird.
Huh.
And the thing is, and it's not because it happened in the caves, right? With the boulders that smash around and stuff like that.
That was a pretty cool way of bringing that back from from the original 4. I appreciate the shout out. I appreciate a lot of things that Separate Ways did just as nods. But anyways, continuing on with your point, we'll eventually get to those points.
Well, getting into that, I don't know what weird funkiness was going on that, but the big thing about this is just everything that they skipped over or cut out of the remake and the main campaign from the original, they re-implemented it into the Separate Ways DLC. So now it really has almost everything that the original game had in this new remake form. And I'm trying to think if there really is missing anything. I'm trying to think. Because I'd
have to sit down and really think about it. I mean, they added a new enemy in there too, so or a new kind of bossy kind of dude.
Yeah, which I don't know what that thing was.
So
maybe there was some documents I should have read, but
somebody had a theory that it might be one of the failed El Gajantes. But that's the only thing I've heard about it. Which, I mean, okay, it's on the island where they experiment. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So okay, that's also the laser room. Dang.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked the laser room. You know what I actually really liked was the part where she escapes and the lasers change color as a nod to the Resident Evil movie.
Yeah,
they turn to those light blue.
What it was.
Yeah, they turn to those light blue lasers. I was like, you know what? That was cool. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. So.
Yeah, it's this really weird thing though, where it's just I have a lot. I'm stroking my beard here, right? And I'm thinking to myself, it's just okay, we have the original, and it was weighed. Remember what I said when the remake originally came out, and we finished it, and I was we were talking about it, and I'm like, look, everybody knows this is gonna get DLC, right? Everybody knows it's gonna be an Ada Wong shtick, right? And then when it got confirmed to be Separate Ways, everybody was like, and then I was like, okay, guys, this is Capcom. This is what I want you to do. All this stuff that was from the original that you skipped over and cut out, put that back in. And that's exactly what they did. It's one of those weird things. Capcom is one of the few game companies, whenever they do something, I say, I wish they would do this. And then they do it. And I don't and I'm not telling them. I don't have an in onto Capcom. to tell them what to put in their games. But it's just one of those things where it's just like they are that in touch with their fans. I think at this point they know what they want, and I think it's a good thing. And it's the, despite like they're not perfect. They had some missteps. I think there's a lot of things in 3 that they overcompensated for some complaints that people made in 2, but by the time 3 came out, people really knew what they felt like they liked and disliked from 2.
So,
and it wasn't what they said on the outset. So it was a little.
The thing I've been hearing about 3 is 3 will get its gold edition, but they're adding back the clock tower sequence, and I heard they might change a couple of things up in there, which sounds like it's a process in itself. Originally, with not knowing anything about the original 3 going through it, I did kind of like it to a point. A couple of the points where I was able to beat it in 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I felt like this should have taken 5 to 6 hours. I don't even know how long I spent on just this remake of 4 or 2, but I know it was way longer than that.
Yeah.
And then also when Nemesis kind of turns into this dog alien creature versus what he was in the original game, which
right.
I had to go back and investigate on that. I'm like, oh, well, I kind of like seeing more of this battle damage thing turn into like a goopy monster that's like very much a shell of its former self. And
that's
doesn't turn
exactly
into
what happens in the original as well. Is like Jill keeps on killing it, and it keeps on coming back.
And I found this out after, which was
fighting.
like, oh, well, I thought that would have been cooler just to see this thing like slowly become more of this creature that's coming at you screaming, "Kill me!" to put me out of my misery, versus this dog boss that I have to fight twice, and one time has zombies. So I don't know, like re-looking at that now because I'm replaying it with Ashley just on the side, re-looking at it, it's kind of like, oh, I think there's a lot of stuff missing here. I don't know whose fault it is, but I don't really feel like playing the finger game as far as pointing fingers, but it could have been better. I think people were just trying to get up to 4. And also, again, this is around the same time the pandemic happened, so I know a lot of the development process happened before the pandemic happened. Launch is when the pandemic was in full swing. So I don't know if that had an effect on the development process of this game, other than Capcom just thought they were just confident enough to think they had something that they were willing to keep going with, and because of the backlash on that, they probably took a big step back going into 4 and said, we need to rethink a lot going into this.
And I said it before, and I'll say it again. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis isn't the real Resident Evil 3. It's a short, like even the original is like this side story short game. Right? The real Resident Evil 3 is Code Veronica.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I know what you're talking about. Yes.
You know, because if you look at that, like Code Veronica is a longer form game.
Well,
you know,
I mean, just look at the
lore. It actually
lore.
moves the story forward, and it's just like this was in mainline 3, and the only reason it got and that was the way it was originally planned, but it got swapped around because Nemesis was going to come out sooner. You know.
Okay. So I don't know the development history between Code Veronica and 3, so I'm just going to take your word for it pretty much on that one. But I mean, I could see what you're saying though, because I mean, it still follows like one of the characters that we had from the last game, which is Jill, and it would I guess it would make sense for a 3.
Yeah, the thing is, like, even the original though, like you go look up reviews of it, right, of when it first came out, and people were just like, where's the second character? There's only half a game here, right? And that's what people were saying. It's just like, oh, this is only half a Resident Evil game. Where's the rest of it? And was a thing that people said about the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis.
Okay, so you didn't get to play as Carlos in the first game then?
There was a short 1-level section, just, you know.
Oh, okay.
But there was a lot of things.
That's also another PS1 game that Ashley and I are hunting for, is original Resident Evil 3
the thing is,
like,
I say that, right? But honestly, I do not remember playing as Carlos. I think there was a thing where you had to go get a cure for Jill. Like you had to go make a serum or something. So I remember
in the original one, right?
In the original one,
Okay.
but I remember being like a very like, oh, I'll be right back, Jill. You go off for like 5 minutes, come back with it after doing a puzzle.
So I
and
will
then
say
then you're back to Jill.
it was really cool, and I was on a Resident Evil forum, and somebody had posted, I think it was in the last 2 days, say something positive about 3, like the new 3, or the remake of 3. And one of the things that I brought up was the sidestep dodge for Jill and the punch
Right.
for Carlos. And honestly, like everybody was like, "No, we love that." And I actually liked it too because I didn't know what Carlos was going to do with his, but I liked the fact that they thought far enough, at least for the combat, to
Right.
think that Carlos needs a little something different than Jill. I do like Jill's dodge and the fact that it slows down time so you can kind of figure out like where you're going and what you're doing. But I
Well-
like Carlos's instinctive, no, I punch you back in the face.
Right.
I don't know. I just like it.
So, and the thing is, the reason they added a dodge mechanic at all is because the original had a dodge mechanic.
Yeah, it did.
I
saw that.
Now, it didn't have any iframes or anything like that. It's like it's super fickle and hard to pull off, but
It's like a
just
really...
the
it's
original
not really
had
a
it, so this one
dodge
has
either.
to
It's
have
just
it
like
too.
a giant sidestep thing that you do, and if you time it right, you're just out of the way.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's one of those things where it's just like, it's a mechanic that's implemented because of the original had it, and it's a mechanic that the original I never used.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because every time I try to do it, I just get hit anyway. Because most of the times I'm trying to dodge Nemesis's tentacles or whatever, and he does big wide sweeps.
Yeah. So
And
he
there's no
adapts to-
iframes on that, so
So he
it's like you're
adapt-
gonna get hit.
His AI in the original one, I did a deep dive recently on Nemesis OG versus what the new one did. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, it's an hour and a half long video of just researching, like, wow, okay, this guy did his stuff. Of the fact that AI's, or not AI, Nemesis's AI adapts to how you're going to respond.
Right.
So, and if you have a pattern, it's going to figure out your pattern and counter that.
Yeah, that
Which
was
is
like
really cool.
The thing is I'm less impressed with that because I am from a fighting game background as far as like
I don't
growing
play
up.
a lot of fighting games, but
and
still.
that's how like you remember how I was complaining about Tekken 7 and how it's just like the you know, it would do that where it's just like it would look at the last character you fought and then the next one would be like punish you for it, and rightfully so, like because at the end of the day that's what a real person's going to do when you actually fight one.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it's just like next round it's going to be wise to the tricks you were doing, and now it's like that same thing is being implemented even on online multiplayer, where it's just like it takes your inputs and despite like you disconnect or something like that, it will still like fight as if you didn't disconnect, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't know what crazy voodoo magic goes into that, but you know what? It's been technology that is like literally as old as the PlayStation, so maybe older than that even, but
Pretty much. It's still cool to see at that time that they were able to create that.
yeah. But
in a
then
game
you
of that
understand like
caliber.
why people were upset at Nemesis in remake of 3, right?
Yes,
where it's
I
just like
see
these are just
exactly why
scripted
now.
events.
Yeah.
Like the original Nemesis shares more with Mr. X from 2 remake than Nemesis from 3 remake.
Which I thought was interesting, like doing a deep dive into 3, and now that's actually why I really want to play the original one now. Is the fact that it was like, oh, it's a choice whether you fight him or run away, and if you choose to
Right.
fight him, which is a slog from what I've seen and heard, you get like something that's very much worth it. When I was replaying it, the remake with Ashley, I know the game well enough to where it's like I chuck a grenade and it stumbles him and he leaves a cool box for me,
Right.
and it was just one grenade. And half the time you're running around in the original one with a grenade launcher, and trying to take
Right.
him out. And I'm like, grenade launchers versus one grenade and getting a goodie. I kind of feel, and then even just like, so in the remake, you get 3 boxes, and they're all upgrades to your pistol. In the original one, I don't know how many boxes you have, but you can essentially get a brand spanking new pistol that does a lot of damage out of it. But in this one, 2 of the boxes are big upgrades for your pistol. The last box is just shotgun shells. Which is a little underwhelming. I mean, they have things in that you can buy with the points that the Resident Evil series, as of current, has established that you can do with your points from achievements. I would have said swap it out with something in there and use that instead of just plain old shotgun shells.
You found them out, Kevin. That's exactly what they did. There was a thing in there, right, where the shotgun shells, right?
Right.
But they were just like, oh no, we don't have anything for our in-game, post-game store, and they wanted the improved replayability, right?
Right.
So they threw that stuff over there rather than fighting Nemesis. Even though the fighting Nemesis thing is something you probably want to save for your second playthrough most of the time. I say that, but most people fought on their first.
If you know the game well enough and start it just from knowing it,
Right.
going into it, at least the remake, cool, you can do that. And I was able to direct Ashley while she was going through it quite easy and get her upgrades just from the get-go. And it's kind of like, well, you could do that as a good player in the original one, but you still got to work for it. It's not like you're not going to get punished for it. And if you are good enough at the controls and have enough skill for it, then yeah, I would say you've earned it very well. So,
Yeah.
Anywho,
But
we were
bringing
talking
back-
about we were
That's a lot
talking
of
about
history.
separate ways.
I can't believe you keep on jumping in right before I'm able to segue us into.
Well, I think it's because we're seeing points from just history of the older games and newer games and how Capcom has evolved over time.
right.
So
and this is the
it's
conversation
interesting,
we
though.
would have even if we weren't recording this, right? These are the stuff we would be talking about.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so the fact that just like we just wanted to talk about it, and we wanted to share that with people,
But-
that's
Okay, so
That's fine. Going back to
overall,
Ada separate ways.
we
though.
liked it. Overall, I'm just gonna say we probably
I
liked
wanna,
it.
I want to shout out
qualms.
some stuff.
Okay, you shout out stuff, and then let's
okay.
talk about qualms after, because I have a
Okay.
couple of them. But
All
continue.
right. The music that plays when you first get onto the experiment island, and the credit music for Separate Ways. I really like those songs.
I liked so as I
like the
as
little,
I, as
little
I predicted.
pinch of spy.
Yeah, they added a
Let's do
lot
it.
more spy stuff. So now I don't know, and I'm trying to find out information, and I wasn't the only person who noticed this. As I predicted, the soundtrack would actually drop when Separate Ways would drop, right?
Yeah.
But it had all the base game stuff. It didn't have anything from the Separate Ways or Mercenaries or anything like that. I check over on Capcom's page, and I see they posted a thing about Separate Ways, right?
Yeah.
Or not Separate Ways. About them releasing the album. I checked out the comic section. Half the comic section is, hey, where's all the Separate Ways and Mercenary stuff?
Mercenaries. Yeah.
So, I'm not the only person asking that, so eventually that'll come around. But honestly, I'm kind of curious if either they changed composer or they did something very different, because there are a lot of callbacks in the Separate Ways soundtrack that I like way more than the base game stuff. And I do like the base game soundtrack as on its own. The base game
But I wanna ask
soundtrack
you
has a lot of personality to its combat or reimagining combat songs, to where I hear hints of the original stuff, and I hear hints throughout like just the rest of the stuff, and I'm like, okay, I like this, but playing this, man, they were pulling stuff from Resident Evil 2 Ada's theme. Like, they had a reimagining of that just in her Separate Ways intro part, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when Wesker popped up, there's a reimagining of his Resident Evil 1 theme in there.
Right, I
I
noticed
was
that
like,
too.
oh, that's
And I
cool.
was
Like, I was like,
clever boy.
so there was a
Yeah.
lot of things that I was noticing throughout it, and them just taking songs from other parts and like making them very noticeable, but very noticeably different. And my
Right.
question is, well, why didn't they do that with the base game too? Like, I mean, some of them, like the very key ones, are there; they exist. But in Ada's, it's so distinct that I kind of liked it a little bit more.
Well, this is the thing. I'll let you know this. It's like I actively choose, because Capcom gives me the option, to play the original soundtrack in the Leon's campaign, like the main campaign, right?
I do it every other playthrough.
And that's because I prefer it. Now, my first playthrough, I played with their music, but every playthrough since then, I played with the classic Resident Evil 4 music. And that's just because I think what I want to say is, like, the style that they've gone for is muting it, right?
It feels very cinematic, but something you could just put in the background.
Yes.
So, and it's taken me
it's-
time, but I haven't bought the entire soundtrack of 2. I just nitpick a lot of the songs I like, and most of them are just the reimaginings or things that they've done distinctively different. But I will say some of the stuff they've done for 2 in the soundtrack category are very just... It feels like they're holding back. Now, what I would say is an example of them not holding back and doing an amazing recreation of all their old tracks is listen to the soundtrack of Dark Side Chronicles. Yeah, I know it's not the best Wii Resident Evil reimagining of all those old games just to get the story across to the audience, but if you listen to the soundtrack, it has really good updated versions of all those old tracks from Code Veronica and 2, to the point where it's just like, man, each of these could just have their own soundtrack. And then listening to what's there for the new stuff, it's a little lackluster. So I only buy certain songs from most of the recreations or reimaginings from the new remakes. But this new one, I knew I wanted because I knew they were diving a little bit more into just creating a personality for the soundtrack. And I say that because there's certain songs that have that distinct, okay, this is its own thing. And I've been listening to the soundtrack, and it's very distinct in the way it sounds. There's a lot of hints to the original albums in there. But I will say with Separate Ways, it's very upfront and forward, and also with its new music that it's pushing is very like spy thrillery and all that. I'm just like, oh, okay, even that has more personality to it.
That's what it is. It's got personality.
And 2 just doesn't really have that. It's holding back so much. I have the original soundtrack for the original 3 and remake 3, and honestly, those 2 don't stick out too much for me, other than like the save themes. So I don't know what that's
thing,
about. Like Code Veronica's soundtrack sticks out a lot. So
like listening to the credit music in Separate Ways remake, right?
Right.
And I was like, this is save music quality good.
I was hoping
as a song.
I was hoping for a reimagining of the original Ada credit song, because I had already heard the song prior in a different area, but it wasn't that. And that was a little disappointing for me, but not much. I was like, it's still a good song though. I was like, I wish they really did that, but you know what? You only had so much time to work with and to do stuff with, so okay, you know what? This is fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that's a qualm, but it's just something I noticed just because of how much, well, of course, how much I love 4.
So, and the thing is like, if you want to roll into, at the end of the day, I really like the entire DLC. It's more Resident Evil 4 remake, which is a really fun thing for me, and it's almost like short easy mode, where it's like not like easier challenge wise, but you'd have to do a lot less work to get the same results, where it's like, oh, you can melee them from across the room, oh, the chapters are actually half as long as any of the main story chapters, and some of them are even shorter. where it's just like, okay, I played it in 2 sittings, but it's after I finished it, I was like, okay, so the main campaign is something you do in 3 to 4 sittings, or 1 sitting if you're like one of those persons gunning for the 8-hour beginning to end runs.
Right.
But Separate Ways is very much like, you can do the whole thing in 1 sitting.
Yeah, I almost did it in 1 sitting. It was morning, and I was like, I need to go to bed. So
exactly, same,
and I only
same
spent
exact
an
deal
hour.
with me.
I only spent an hour on the last half of it, and I know like if that was like the night's project, I could have did it in 1 night or in 1
Right.
sitting. So, there was certain things I will admit that I kind of skipped on, like the regenerators. I don't think I killed a single one. I just started running
the
past
only one I
stuff
didn't
because
kill
I was
was
getting tired.
the black regenerator was the only one I skipped because I looked at him and he had like 8 parasites in him, and I was like, oh, no way, I'm not doing
yeah, I
this.
saw him too. And I'm like, I can skip this, right? Looked around. Oh, hey, I could just run past this. Okay, cool.
There's a little loop back in the kitchen, and I just janked him.
Yeah,
and went through.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did too. I was like, okay.
Uh,
Oh man. Okay, so
let's get let's get into things we don't like. Does that sound good?
Qualms. Or actually, let's finish off with Sadler boss, and then running into Ashley randomly and saying hi bye. I thought that was kind of
Right.
funny. The Sadler boss. What did you think of that? Before we
I liked
start
it.
into qualms. I thought it was interesting. Still don't like how like tentacles can just go through pillars, but okay, whatever. I was using.
I didn't have that problem at all.
I had
I was
that.
using those
Actually,
pillars.
Paul came over and he saw me beating that part. He's like, "It went through the pillars." What? I was like, "Yeah."
The pillars are my friends. I didn't have that issue at all.
Oh, okay. I had that issue.
I liked how he shot your own bullet. Like, if you shoot him too much, he'll shoot your bullets back at you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And as someone who was
established.
using the TMP, that was his main attack for attacking me.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it is a bullet count. I don't think it's a damage thing. I think it's how many bullets you fill him with.
Oh, yeah. I can kind of see that actually.
Because I tried fighting him with a pistol, and I hardly ran into him shooting the bullets back at me. But
I mostly stuck with the pistol just because I was trying to land a lot of headshots so I could get that combo and then do the thing where you jump across the room with the grappling gun and smack him in the face with a knife.
I will say, halfway through the Separate Ways campaign, the countering and parrying system finally clicked for me. So all those
took me a little
tentacles,
while.
you can parry all those tentacles.
Oh, okay. Even with the U3 stuff?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I was
Okay.
parrying him a lot.
I need
He
to
was
get
the guy
better
that
at
taught me
parrying.
parrying. Actually, when I fought him in the village is when I started. So.
Oh, okay. I need to get better at that. I am. I usually.
Yeah, it's definitely perfect parry kind of stuff.
Okay. Tapping just slightly into the Mercenaries mode, you have to be doing a good job if you're doing with Wesker because he has a
Right.
very particular parry that we will get into a little later.
Yeah.
But, okay. Segueing into qualms.
Okay.
You start.
I don't. Okay. Ada Wong's dialogue.
Same.
Whenever, because they have the stuff that they have from the main campaign, and then they have all the additional stuff that they made for this new DLC, and I'm noticing that there's a difference. It's almost like they're slightly different Ada Wongs as characters. And it starts at the beginning when she's talking about just like, who will use this evil power, yada, yada, dot, yada, philosophizing. And I'm like, that's not very Ada Wong of you.
She does a thing. So in the original one, she had a little spiel that she did, but it was mostly, it didn't have a whole lot of her opinion. It was mostly just her making observations.
Exactly.
And I think this is in an effort to make her more human. I think there's a way to make Ada Wong human. I just don't think it's this way. It feels very out of place, and I will start with even not just the dialogue, and I'm not going to blame the voice actor for this, but the VO is atrocious. There's points where I'm hearing her voice crack, and I'm like, oh, what? Was there no take 2? What happened?
Yeah.
Seriously, what happened?
Which
So, and again, that's not it. It's a director's problem. I'm just gonna say that's a director's problem. I think
yeah.
honestly, I wish they would have kept. And also, if you really want to look this up, looking at the evolution of Ada Wong's voice, she sounds a lot less of an elegant spy type and just very normal and a little bland. I know they're trying to go for that normal. She
sounds like
factor,
Ada Wong
but
if she started smoking.
yeah. Well, not even with this.
Like Cruella DeVille cigars.
Just chain smoking those.
I don't know. But the thing is, it's like, okay. So the thing is, though, is they're off by degrees. Like, she'll be talking to Leon, right?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, I saw this from Leon's perspective. And it's like, okay, that's that Ada Wong. And then as soon as she's, like, off by herself, it's like a slightly different Ada Wong is talking. And well, I'm not talking about like voice. I'm talking about the actual lines that were written.
So I think the reason for that is one, and I know that they're wanting to try and do something with her character. I just don't think they're doing it right. But she could be her true self by herself.
Okay.
But when she's around people, she puts up a facade. Obviously, I mean, we could see it with Luis. I mean, Luis is kind of gunning for her because, well, he's a ladies' man. And she's kind of playing into that, like with the cigarettes, the dancing, and all how she communicates with him.
Right.
You can kind of see it there because she's getting something from him. And you can even see it in the remake of 2, where she has to kind of play into it because she's been hurt. So now she kind of has to play into that as far as the manipulator, which, I mean, that is what she does. I prefer the old way. I'm sorry. I prefer the old way of how she's a little bit more...
I get it. Like, the Separate Ways story, right? And I don't remember the original so much, but this one is clearly Ada deciding firmly deciding to change course. Not to sell herself to the highest bidder, but actually be a good person and not let billions of people die because of money. And it's that thing of like, and I'm like, okay, I buy into that as a character thing, right?
Right.
And I think I'm where I get head scratchy at it. I'm not even angry or disappointed or anything like that. Like, so if anybody's listening to this and it's just like, man, you're being really hard on these people. It's just like, look,
we've watched them develop since the beginning.
It's jagged. Like, I get yanked. Like, she'll talk to Leon, right? And then she'll talk to Luis, and then she'll monologue to herself, and it's just like I'm being yanked around, and there's not any, like, which one of these Adas is the real Ada? And you could argue it's just like, well, Ada doesn't know. She's trying to figure out morality, right? But at the same time, I'm just like... I think there's a better
way to do it. I mean, okay, look at...
It's a writer thing for me. It's not even a voice actor thing. It's a writer thing.
So... going into 4, original 4, and into this 4, I don't know if the canon still carries, but the story is that Wesker got her out of Raccoon City before it blew. She just had to get a sample of the G virus. And after she did that, she was indebted to him for whatever jobs at the time there were. Rolling into 4, which takes place, 2004, so like 6 years later. Yeah, 6 years later. With her knowing what she knows, I think it would have been interesting for her to say, hey, you know what, I can take a little bit more of a moral stance because meeting Leon in the original 2 challenged her morality. Yeah. By meeting somebody who was actually genuine and nice and not being fake.
The actions that Ada, the character, is doing, I agree with. I like that as character traits. It's the way it's betrayed. It's just like, and it's weird because for me, it's just like, okay, guys, you almost had it.
It's
right?
close. It's close.
You're at 70% there. You just like, and as a person, I'm like, if you were in the 80 to 90 mark, then it'd be like, okay, good, right? Because nothing needs to be perfect, right? I never want to see 100% on anything. But the fact that it's just so close to being good on just like a lines thing, like the words that are being said. And then I don't know, like there's definitely something iffy, because I noticed this about, like, I wonder how she's being coached. And when I say coached, I mean like directed
Yeah.
in the recording room. I want to see a session to figure out like what the heck is the direction going on in that room. Because Leon's voice actor, he's the same guy that did Leon's voice in 2, right?
Yes. Paul, I don't remember his last name, but it starts with an A.
Yeah, and so he's kind of, it's just like, and the thing is he updated the voice for this new game. He's playing an older, more, what do you call it? He's much more cautious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not just going to trust you on face value, right? He doesn't judge a book by a cover like he did, you know? And he rolls with it way better, right?
I think he honestly,
looks,
between 1 and 2, 1, I don't blame him for anything. I think his voice acting is just fine as that, because he's playing a 21-year-old Leon. I just think his dialogue is written terribly for that, to establish certain things. But moving on to this game, there was a lot of focus on his maturity as a person, plus with his training, and also he's just like, hey, can I do anything to save anyone? And if you look at the original 2, there was a lot of effort. There was a lot more personality in Leon as a character of constantly trying to save people and them dying. And in this one, it was like, there was, in 2, you don't get to see that as much because he doesn't interact with as many people in the 2 remake. So you don't get to see him fail as much. You can still sense the failure of everything that is happening, but he legitimately, thought Ada died, and there was a legitimate moment with him and Ada without manipulation there. Is when she, essentially, quote-unquote, dies, where they kiss and everything like that. And it's like, oh, well, shoot. This was kind of an earned moment. And also even Ada breaks for a second, just a split moment, to wish that she was someone like Leon.
Right.
If I would encourage, I'm not going to go through it here, but I would encourage anybody to that is interested in Ada to really look at her track record, because her earlier stuff shows where her morality peaks as far as being a mercenary and the things she's done leading up to Raccoon City, and some of it after Raccoon City, which is why you would see that development in her character being very like, man, if I could do it over again. And it first always starts off as survival. In her case, in her story, it started off as survival before she learned she could make money from it, and then got tied up with Umbrella and Wesker and all that, leading up into where we are in 4 currently. But so
I'll tell you, the one thing I do like about it, right, like her whole narrative in 4 remake, right, is the fact she starts in pretty much the same place Leon starts with her monologue at the beginning, where she's just like, dang it, everything changed with Raccoon City. And it's funny because when Leon's talking about it, he's talking about the world, but when Ada's talking about it, she's talking about herself.
Right.
She changed when Raccoon City happened. And it's Leon's fault that she changed when Raccoon City happened.
Yeah, which is kind of cool and a good thing, actually.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, that is good character development. I agree with that. I think it's really good. But the thing is, it's just like, it's a really weird mix mesh of things almost not coming together, right? It's like a puzzle piece where all the pieces are a little loose.
Yeah. Now, I would say, if you were to play an Ada game, or campaign with Ada, I would say, and I know a lot of people don't like this game, but 6 has a lot of very consistent Ada talking to herself and sounding the same way as she sounds talking to other people. She has a lot more consistency as a character in that game. I'm not going to say the game's great or anything. It's got a lot of things going on there.
I'm going to fill you in on the current zeitgeist. Are you ready for this, Kevin?
Yeah, sure.
The current understanding of Resident Evil 6 and its standing in the grander franchise is it's pretty good. Did you know that? It's in the meta. Like, you can like Resident Evil 6 now. And nobody, like, the thing is, it's like, That caught me off guard. And I had to talk to a good 3 or 4 people before it was just like, no. Like people like Resident Evil 6.
There's
Like,
a group
it's been
of
years
people
since
out there
it-
that like it.
Yeah, but the thing is like the group that likes it are Resident Evil fans, right? They're not just like, oh. And the thing is, it's weird because I'll tell you the people who still don't like Resident Evil 6. They're people who don't play Resident Evil games. It's that bigger crowd that Capcom was trying to get with 6. You know, all your Gears of War players and Call of Duty players. Those people.
Possibly. Now,
Those
I
are the
haven't
people
done
that
enough
still
research
don't
on
like
that
Resident
part.
Evil 6.
So,
Which
for the most
I'm not
part,
calling people out if you guys play Call of Duty. It's just like the games you like. Like I even give you permission to like both Black Ops and Resident Evil 6. You know,
I mean, why
I'm not your
not?
boss.
Why not? But,
but
and so that's not what I get from the groups that I'm in. A lot of people will really dislike 6. And
Well-
apparently, like 5 is a little less hated, but they say the problems with 6 start from 5 as far as the combat goes, and
the
like
thing is,
a more
when I
action-heavy
talk
game.
to people, right, and I say which one of these is the bad Resident Evil game, right? If anybody who doesn't know about the first-person shooter Resident Evil games or the Gaiden ones, they're gonna say it's 5 over 6. Like it's almost like they forget about 6 in a weird way.
So
now there are
weird
still
because
people
5's
out
so
there
much
that
loved,
really,
too.
really. Well, that's that thing where it's just like it's like an understood rule in the community. Like your Resident Evil fans, like if you're gonna play 5, you're gonna play it co-op.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
just
the
place.
only way to enjoy it now.
But also,
where-
like, the thing about 5 is the director of that literally watched Black Hawk Down and said, I want to make that the next Resident Evil game.
isn't that the story for like some of the worst pieces of media?
Yeah, well, it's
You
kind
know?
of funny. If you look at Infinite Darkness, that season or series of Resident Evil, the very beginning, I'm like, this is just Black Hawk Down and Resident Evil 5 meshed together again.
Eh,
Just the beginning of it, and I'm just, are we
As
going
a
to go back
person
and...
who is starving for Black Hawk Down content, I think like our only options is Black Hawk Down and Resident Evil 5. I think that's the only Black Hawk Down games we have.
Besides the Delta games that are technically quote-unquote Black Hawk Down, but they don't really feel like Black Hawk Down.
Did you hear that they finally came out with a new Delta Force game?
Really?
Yeah, after
that
years
surprises
they
me.
actually,
I gotta go check that out really quick.
Look up new Delta Force. There's a new Delta Force game that came out. I don't know anything about it, but I know as a person where it's just like you and me played the Delta Force Black Hawk Down stuff.
Yeah, that first game. I know there was a
Yeah.
second game, and I didn't get a chance to tackle that, but I know I played a good portion into the beginning, midway through the first game. I'd replay them, though. If I had an opportunity to, I'd replay them just to see if they were solid games and if they hold up.
If I could give those a little mini review here, I would say it's a good first-person shooter with the maps being way too big.
Oh, interesting. They sound like the
Yeah.
PS2 Battlefield 2 game. That's what it sounds like, because those maps were huge, and I don't know.
Huge
even
and
know if they
empty
had-
is the way I would describe
Yeah,
them, with patches
yeah,
of a lot of enemies.
I have those games too. I have that game. I'm very tempted to pop it into my PlayStation 2 and replay it just to see where the issues are and if it's still fun. But I remember when I was a kid playing it, I had fun with it. It was just kind of weird because Battlefield is a game you play online with people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that game had multiplayer. I'd have to go check. But I think that's where
Battlefield?
Yeah. Like Battlefield 2
yeah.
on well, you know the PC version. I know
Yes.
the PS2 version. Which those are two
are they
very
different?
they are very different
okay.
games. I mean,
Interesting.
I remember what like your brother JJ played and let us play is incredibly different than what the PlayStation 2 one has. I might go back and relook at both those games. I'm kind of curious, but yeah. Anywho, falling back into RTI.
I think we pretty much said everything bad we can say about the voice acting and the character and the writing and all that stuff.
I wanna
Like,
get
is there
a little
anything
bit
in the
into
game,
Wesker,
part of the
maybe a little
game?
bit. Maybe just a little bit with Wesker, but I think we kind of covered it.
Oh
where
yeah,
it's just-
we
they
didn't
picked a
talk about Wesker.
I just feel like
I
he's a
like-
little too aggressive, but it's just like I feel like just because there's not enough establishment of where Wesker is coming
that's
from.
what I was going to be. Because right now you have two kind of Weskers. You have, like, the cold, calculating, emotionless Wesker, and the sadistic psychopath who wants to kill everybody in the world.
Yes. Yes, which I like them both equally, but...
the thing is I would prefer something to nothing.
Also, what happened to his British accent? I'm just saying, I missed it.
I think you're going to have to say bye-bye to the British accent, because, like, his original canon is he got more British the more evil he became. Which true. I'm like...
This is very true. Which, okay, so somebody threw out a theory, and I'm very curious, going into 5. And I know
5
this is...
or 5 remake?
5 remake. I would say.
Okay, we're going to speculation.
Okay. Spoiler warning for those of you who haven't played and gotten all the way through it. This is your warning. So, post-credit scene.
Right.
Also, I love what they did with the music. I was like, it's his theme from 5. I'm so excited.
Okay, let's also gush about the credits go by. You get your player score. Your A, B, or C ranking, and then it's like, okay, that's your ranking, and then it just slowly pans out to be in the same room. I appreciated that.
Well, they did that with Leon, so...
Oh, did they do that with Leon's? I didn't remember.
Well,
what was it, like Hunnigan's office or something?
Yeah, it started from Hunnigan's point of view, and then it turned into that. So they kind of did the inverse. But in the background, of course, you can see on the side, Krauser's body. So he's got everything he needs. And then also
what do you think
her
about
line.
That?
Okay, so this is where the tinfoil hat territory comes into.
Okay,
the very beginning when she's talking to, what's his name on the island? Wesker on the island, right? She turns around and says, whose blood are you coming for this time? That might be our buddy from Code Veronica. Stephen Burnside reference. I'm not sure. It might be.
Oh, I didn't think about this.
Because he went to the island to collect his body, and I don't know if these count as canon anymore, but Darkside Chronicles kind of confirmed that in there, and I know it's there was a scene in original Code Veronica for that. Now, this is going into more tinfoil hat territory, is what if he revived both of them and has Jill? With his new mind control stuff, and now it's just like, he's got his own personal bodyguards of these 3 people.
So you're presenting to me a theory that presupposes that Krauser could be in the remake of 5?
And Steve Burnside.
Actually, what was that crazy white jacket guy that you fight as a whale in 5?
Oh, are you talking...
The yacht man. The creepy yacht guy.
I know who you're talking about. He's the New Yorker.
My Extreme Makeover!
Yes, that dude. I don't remember his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
Replace him with Krauser.
Oh, that would be awesome.
That would make more sense
actually for him to turn that huge of a beast, and then those are the people that you fight.
And I also can't imagine Krauser going it's my Extreme Makeover. It's I could see it.
I mean, does anybody really... Who has cosplayed as that character? Who cares about that character that much?
I saw someone cosplay as him. They were amazing.
That's cool.
It was him mid-mutation.
Oh, that's cool. So somebody enjoyed the mutation.
So he was half whale, almost. So...
I wouldn't mind that character being cut for Krauser or a different character.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting, okay... Well, if Steve is in the game, he might have to die. Which, that would be Chris's doing. And, there would be no Jill there for, closure. He would have to do it via phone or whatever they got. So, I don't know. I don't think that'll happen. But I'm still speculating just because...
The thing is,
people have been talking
us...
about Steve coming back for a long time just because
Yeah.
Wesker took him and did something with him. That's all we know, and we never hear about it again.
Except for this. We didn't get a Code Veronica remake. Now, of course, Super Wesker is canon, so some kind of Code Veronica narrative happened in the remake version, too.
Right.
right? So, like,
I can see Capcom holding off now that they've introduced Wesker. Like, they made him a little bit more a part of the story. Like, a kind of a reintroduction of him.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like the thing is like everything they did with Wesker, I liked. It's different. So if you don't like different, then it's like okay, well, one of the problems about remakes is you do have another thing to compare it to directly, you know. And the thing is, it's like it's one of those things where it's just like they're being more serious about their narrative, but it's so funny how silly the things they have to do to make it more serious.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun. It's kind of comedic what the things they have to make it less realistic to make it more realistic in tone, right?
Yes. That's
And-
what I'm noticing as well, actually.
And the thing is, it's like I'm glad that Capcom took a risk with that because it's stuff like that that made like the shooting ranges a thing. Because like
Right.
an actual super serious Resident Evil 4, it's just like, wait, why does this guy have this mercenary dude on your, you know, in the middle of this contested zone, setting up shooting ranges, right? It's like, yeah, he's selling guns. He's a gun runner, right? So that makes a sense from there. But the whole pirate thing, I'm just like, no, this is just a stupid little mini game put in there for fun, and I love it. And I love everything about that.
I'm a little sad that I didn't get to do that as Ada, but okay.
That
it's
was
fine.
cut
I
in
can,
separate ways.
I can,
but the
I
thing
can
is,
live without it. But
I find that perfectly acceptable. Yeah, I find that acceptable. The other
yeah.
thing, like, I'm trying to
Let's
think.
see.
Is there
Any other
anything
qualms?
gameplay wise that really bugged you? Because the gameplay I thought was just like it's Resident Evil 4 with a grappling hook.
yeah.
Is
So
the
that's
census
what
I
I've been trying
got.
to think of. Is honestly, I can't really think of too much.
I had a lot of fun fighting the bosses, all the new bosses. I think
I
were
did
good.
too. I did too. Sadler. Oh man, I'm trying to.
It sounds like you had some problems with Sadler, but you know what? It sounds
I
like
mean,
it.
I didn't die first time around with him. I just had a lot of issues, like going into like, okay, I'm gonna use this pillar to hide. Reaches through the pillar to smack me, and like, it's here. It's meant to block your attack.
Yeah.
So there was a couple.
So the
moments
pillars
like
are there
that,
only
but-
for 2 of his attacks. The rest of his stuff, like he can sidestep pretty far, really fast, to get an angle on you. But like the 2 attacks that you want to use the pillars for is the shooting, like the gunshots that he can do with your bullets, and then also like when he spews all this goo around, which is a reused attack from, what's his name? Salazar. Oh, no, not Salazar. Man, I can't remember the little man. What's his name, Kevin? Help me out here.
Ramon.
Ramon, thank you. Jeez. He had a spew attack like that too. So actually, you know what? I will say this. I like all the bosses in the remake over the original bosses.
They're reimagined. I get it.
Like every single one of them. Like the one boss, the only boss that they kept conceptually, like to be exactly the same, right? Is the ice hallway where you have to freeze the Red Hood guy.
Oh yeah.
That's the only boss that's the same. Every single other boss got a revamp, right? It mechanically works differently.
I will say, like, one thing that was, like, a giant, like, what the heck attack. And I don't know, I'm watching JoJo with a friend right now.
Oh, okay.
Was
So that's gotta
Sadler's big O, like, hop from one end to one end while swinging his
be fun. Tentacles all over the
tentacles.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
That's-
I'm just gonna stand behind the pillar.
It-
That doesn't protect you.
Yeah, I was just like, and I wasn't, okay, so I wasn't even close to the pillar when that happened. I ran all the way to the altar to regroup and reload everything, and then he did that. I didn't get hit by it. I was like, oh, I was very lucky. He only did it once. But I'm like, what's up with this JoJo's Bizarre Adventure wind Wamu attack? I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay, I'm glad I was ready for that. have a grenade.
Yeah,
That was
I
what
think
I will say about that, at least. We can move
Yeah.
on to the other bosses if you want to. But
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
but
my last comment
that's
about
pretty much
Sadler.
all I really have to say about the Separate Ways campaign. I think it's a good addition to the game, and I think it pushes it back into like where I was kind of going back and forth depending on what mood I was in. You know, whether I liked the original 4 or this new 4 better. And I think with
I like
this
them both.
addition, I think it like because it was specifically this time that the pairing clicked for me, because originally the pairing, like I played the entire original campaign where I think I didn't really parry until the night fight with Krauser at the end of the campaign.
Oh, okay.
Because I knew the knife did more damage. Like that's something that it's like, well, if the knife isn't doing more damage to him, what are you doing? I was like shotgun and knife. Those were the two things I brought into that fight.
You didn't
and
even
then
get to use guns in that fight, technically.
Yeah.
They took that ability away from you, which I'm
Did
like...
they?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was just knife
No
then.
weapons, just knife. So,
Yeah.
I was able to get that fight the first time around, and I was able to sometimes parry. Now I'm a little bit better. I just need to be able to read the enemy's
Yeah.
movements better in order to calculate when to do that.
Yeah.
But it's getting a lot better, especially with heading into this version, and also
Yeah.
a segueing into the Mercenaries mode, because, well, Wesker parries in a very specific way.
Well, let's get into who got added to the roster.
Yes.
So you want to go down that?
Sure. So originally we had Leon, Luis, Hunk. That was it, right? Yeah, that was it. We didn't have Ada. Originally.
Let's see. There was Luis, Hunk.
And just
Was
Leon.
Hunk there?
Yeah, Hunk was there.
Okay, so it's Luis, Hunk, Leon, and is there an unlockable costume for Leon?
So they recently introduced costumes.
So
the costumes are a new thing.
Okay, so they added Ada Wong, Albert Wesker,
And costumes.
and a new costume for Leon and a new costume for Ada.
And a new costume for Wesker.
Is there a new costume for Wesker? It wasn't on the
so it's his
the
OG.
list.
It's somewhere.
Because when I unlocked it, I got that outfit for him to wear in the campaign, Separate Ways.
Oh, okay. I might have to
But
recheck
yeah,
that
when
then.
I went to Mercenaries, because costumes.
Sorry,
because
it's like when
costumes
you
are-
open up
are-
the game and it's just you're blasted with a bunch of goodies and you're like, ah!
Yeah. So, the characters that got added, which because we've never talked about this, I guess we should do just like an overall thing about Mercenaries and the characters and all that. And
Sure. Yeah, we never talked
because,
about it. Yet,
like, I mean, Leon and Ada are Leon and Ada from their campaigns respectively. But everybody has like this superpower added to them. I don't know what Leon's is.
So Leon's just does more damage with each hit. And I think they applied
Okay.
the same thing to Ada, because I didn't really see anything change. What's it? Luis has that bomb that he chucks
He has
onto
dynamite.
Yeah, he
that
has
can,
dynamite.
like, yeah.
And Hunk's, I think, is just more damage to his main... Oh, it's
Actually,
unlimited ammo. It's
unlimited ammo for a
That's
certain time, and he doesn't even have to reload it and stuff like that. That's
Yeah.
an amazing thing.
It's just
by
a
the
faucet of lead.
way. And then Krauser. Krauser wasn't originally.
Oh,
in there,
yeah,
too.
that's right,
Forgot
that's
about
right.
Krauser.
I liked playing as Krauser in the Mercenaries mode. He was pretty... the original one, a little rough to get used to, but once you got it, it just required some skill, and you could do a
Yeah.
lot of damage if you did it just right. And this one's kind of the same way. Like, he could
Yeah.
do some pretty gnarly attacks normally, but once he hits his ultimate mode, oh boy, you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. This is so
his
cool.
arms explode into knives, and then it's
Yes.
just like I get to play prototype for 2 seconds.
Yeah. And then Wesker's, I really, really liked it.
The
But
trick of him,
I
he
got
doesn't have
some
a
Resident
knife.
Evil 6 vibes.
Yeah,
Because he literally just does all of Jake's moves.
which is what I liked about Jake is he did all Wesker's moves. So,
Yeah, so it's just more
Back and
like
forth.
more of that.
but
That's what I wanted.
Like, here's a little thing. So he has the Killer 7 weapon, and it only has 7 bullets in the gun.
Right.
But it's like an insta kill to whatever he hits. It's like a massive amount of damage.
I want to say his pistol does a little bit more damage than most, because a couple of the enemies, without using anything else, I was able to one-shot properly. I was like,
It's actually
that's interesting.
it's a mid-tier weapon. It does barely more than half of a lot of basic enemies' health. And the reason it
Interesting.
does that is because so you can
I
shoot
just must
them
be
but not
really
kill
good
them.
at criticals then.
Because, well, that's the thing. What you want to do with Wesker is you want to get everybody into a dazed state. That's why he has a bunch of the flashbang grenades and not like incendiary grenades or anything like that.
Oh, no,
Or frag
that makes
grenades.
sense.
Because if he tosses a grenade and a flashbang in a group of enemies, all of a sudden he can just melee all of them.
Yes.
Like he's very customized. It's just like all of his weapons, they're not there to kill and do major damage. They're used to be setups to him doing melee attacks.
Yes.
And because he's like Super Wesker, you know, he has vampire powers, so that means he can just like do a kung fu move from halfway across the map if he sets that up. And just like Ada, you know, if there's anybody between you and your target, they guys just get knocked out of the way.
So, funny thing about, like, the day it was released, Ashley has it on PlayStation. So, as soon as she got off work, she's like, hey, you want to mess around in Mercenaries? I was like, yeah, sure. I watched her play a round with Ada. And then after that, she was like, hey, you know, try Ada on, like, the shipyard map. And I was like, can I try Wesker instead? Because... Of course, why wouldn't I?
That's
Wesker's
your main,
that's
right?
one of my mains.
That's the one you played as back. Like I'm much more of a Krauser guy myself.
I like Krauser.
But
I like the way he's set up.
man, Wesker is
just-
a real power trip.
Well, she forgot what Wesker could do because it's been a long time since we played 5. And she's like, oh, so no wonder you wanted to play as Wesker. I'm like, yes. Just yes.
Which is amazing. like I stand by my statement. Like Wesker is the only Capcom character that could fit in Resident Evil and Devil May Cry.
Yeah, I could see that. I could easily see
know?
that, actually. He'd probably make pretty good friends with Virgil. But eventually they would betray each other.
Yeah, that's kind of how that narrative goes.
That's just what's going to happen at the end.
Because I need more power, Dante.
So, but the thing is, it's like, and it's amazing. And that's a free update. Those two characters, they just got added to the game.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need separate ways to play these new additional characters. They're
No,
all
you don't.
and the thing is, it's like a snowball, right? Where it's like I'm already getting A's with Leon across things now. That's how good I got with pairing. I'm now in Mercenaries getting A's with Leon. And I'm hardly using any ammo doing it. But the fact that Wesker, he can clear a room, and it's just like, I guess I'll pick up more pistol ammo for my gun that I have like 200,000 bullets for already.
Just like stacking
Just
the
like-
rounds. Like, I'm not even using half of these. I'm just using these to stun before I do cool stuff.
The other unique weapon I want to point out with Krauser, right, is he's also got like a bow with explosive arrows.
Yes.
And that's useful for getting like a whole bunch of people on the other end of the room because Krauser actually moves slower than anybody else.
He does. He's a bigger, bulkier boy.
Yeah.
And I
The
think- I don't
fastest
remember
thing
what
he
his
can
second-
do is his dash move. One, he is mutated with his knife arms.
So I want to say
But,
he has his knife, he has that bow, and I think he's got his submachine gun still.
Yep, he's got the submachine gun. Let's see, Hunk. I gotta complain about Hunk. Hunk is really fun to play.
I got
But-
bored really fast.
His breaking neck move. He does that with headshot staggered enemies from the head from any angle, and the camera whips around for him to be walking up behind him, and it's really jarring.
It's weird. It is weird. I wish he had a little bit more of a combo thing, considering where he's coming from. Oh, well, if you know the history of behind Hunk, that's
Yeah.
If you know,
The thing
you
is-
know. Look up these
and-
characters after their bio if you don't know. some
The
of the
other
history
thing I
behind it.
noticed is this Mercenaries, and this is the one change they made to Mercenaries that made me like Mercenaries. So it's like, okay, you're game over in two ways, right? Either you run out of time or you get killed, right? In previous mercenary modes, when you get killed, you failed. Right?
Yes, you didn't get to keep any of your points.
In this one, it is a successful round whether you run out of time or you die. Or if you clear all the enemies.
It feels a little handholdy to me, but I mean...
It is just kind enough for me from it to go from like... Because I don't have to feel like I wasted time if I died. Because if I go through getting all the timers, right? And getting all the extra time and getting maximum time so I can have as much time as I can to hopefully clear the entire round of all the enemies. Then... But I die halfway through... And it's just like, and the thing is like, I was playing Ada, right? And then it's just like, I got killed by Chainsaw Guy that I couldn't see, that snuck up behind me because I was dealing with another Chainsaw Guy. And I was just like, man, that sucks. And then I got an A++ rank at the end of that. And I was like, oh, that's good enough. That's all I needed because I'm trying to unlock her alternate costume, right? And you just need A's across the board. And so I'm just like, oh, I failed in that, but I still got my points and my record and everything.
And you know,
it's a passing grade. Yeah, and I liked that. I liked the fact that it's just like, oh, I died, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just part of the game.
I think it's cool. I don't know. The Dark Souls side of me is like, you didn't earn those in battle, did you? But
The thing is like, if you want to talk about how do you win Mercenaries, it's getting the S++ rank, right?
I've gotten double S's before.
So the S++ rank, you only get that when you clear the map of all enemies. Like, there's no more enemies to fight. I thought it was infinite until I got it with Wesker.
Oh, that's good. That's actually good to know.
There's an actually a finite number. Yeah, it's just like I still had 2 minutes on the clock, right? And it's just like all enemies defeated, S++ rank. Congratulations. Now there might have been something I could have done to get a better or fancier score, like a longer combo or something like that. But at that point, it's not a question of beating the level anymore. It's more of a question of competing with people on their leaderboards.
Yeah.
Which I got a question for you, Kevin. Do you upload your scores?
I want to say they're on there. I think I put an automatic thing, but I just put it into the ether. I haven't actually competed against anybody. Can we find each other? I'm curious.
And
I haven't dedicated a whole ton of time to that, but I would dedicate some time just to compete a little bit with you and see who stands where and who is the better man. No, I'm just kidding.
Who the better man?
Who the better man?
You, me. Yeah, so the thing is, it's just like, the fact is just like, I think Resident Evil 4 Remake is more worth your money now than it was when it initially came out because of free update.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
The separate ways,
also,
you can take it or leave it. But the thing is, you still get, if you're like, but I just want to play as Ada Wong, she's still in Mercenaries.
Or you could wait a year and a half and just get the gold edition of Resident Evil 4 that'll have whatever DLC stuff they have planned left, or if this is where they're just going to call it quits.
The one thing I did not try with the DLC, and I should have did it for this podcast, but I didn't. I completely slipped my mind, was trying the VR mode. I forgot to do that.
I wanted to ask you about that, but you know what? That's fine.
I'll try it out. Because the thing is, you played the RE VR, right? RE4 VR?
I did not get a chance to play that one.
Well, you didn't play that one. I thought you did.
I really wanted to, but my friend just did not have it, and I was like, "Oh, that's fine. I'm not gonna make you get it."
And the thing is like, is Resident Evil 7 and 8 already have VR modes? And the thing is I'm just gonna, I'll tell you what, Kevin, is I'll actually go through and play through all of the Resident Evil VR games that I have access to. Unfortunately, actually, now that I remember it, I don't think I can play Resident Evil 7 VR because you need the RTX update for that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I can't do RTX. So instead of it just being a thing you turn on and off in the options, I had to unupdate my version of the game so it's pre-RTX patch, and with it went the VR mode. 8 still has a VR mode, though, in it. They learned their lesson. They made one mistake. I think it's okay. I'm not too bummed out about it. I think I'm willing to forgive Capcom on that.
Even before the RTX mode, there was already, and I don't know if this imported earlier or not.
PlayStation exclusive.
Okay, so it was a PlayStation.
It was a PlayStation
exclusive.
exclusive prior to the RTX update on PC.
Interesting. Well, kind of winding up this podcast a little bit, or this episode.
Yeah.
I will say, hey, food for thought. Tell me if you get a chance to get it to run and save it for the next podcast with an update. Because next podcast, we're probably going to finally have Ashley back, and she'll be able to give us a little bit of a brief summary of what she thought of Separate Ways. Though I think currently she likes it. It's just challenging. So it's going to be a little different for her. Or it's been a little bit more of a different experience for her. But hey, you know what? Grow some new skills from these games.
Absolutely.
So, you know what? Cool. But
I learned how to parry. You can too.
Yes. Anywho, all right. I have been your host, Kevin. This is my co-host,
Jacob Christensen. I'm Jacob Christensen.
He's the Jacob Christensen.
I am the Jacob Christensen.
And you have been listening to Resonance of Horror
Save Room Podcast.
Sorry.
Save Room Podcast.
Save Room Podcast.
You know, if you did this every week like you said you would, you'd actually get the name down.
Oh, yes.
Yes. There's not enough memes in this episode, but you know what? We were down to business.
Yes, this is our longest episode so far. I just
you'll
realized
edit it down.
that. Maybe.
It's okay.
I don't know. I mean, there's not that much. I mean, other than this part right here.
We're talking about relevant content, despite our podcast not having any structure. I.e., if somebody was listening to this and they hadn't already played the DLC, they would not have a clue what we're talking about.
I will put spoilers in the description.
Yeah.
Or the name, whichever. Anywho.
Yeah.
Go back to whatever goblins or ghosts or zombies you're fighting in whatever mansion or castle you're in. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast or the content on our channel, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And,
comment.
Yes, we would
Tell
love
us
your
the
feedback.
foolishly foolish. Tell us how much you actually love Ada Wong's voice actor, and you think she should dub over all of Ada Wong's lines, even on 2 remake and all that.
Actually, just dub everyone, including Leon and Wesker's lines. Everyone sound exactly like her.
I think I can mod that in. The new version of Fluffy Mod Manager came out the other day.
Oh, just take an AI and just just sample the voice, and then okay, it goes for everyone. Anywho, thank you for listening.
Postscript.
Yes, postscript. I don't know how I'm gonna chop this up. The end might be what I have to chop up.
Yeah. Just put this in the beginning and then have echoing voices.
Oh, that could work.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
You all have a good night.
Anywho, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.